Welcome to Business Reporter's Risk Management Campaign, hosted on the Telegraph Online. Critical national infrastructure organizations like water or power companies utilize a lot of technology, but they do not necessarily understand what their cybersecurity risks are. Why not? Because most critical national infrastructure was built decades ago and lacks understanding of what these cybersecurity issues are. A lot of critical national infrastructure organizations have been asking IT security people for advice on these issues instead of people with an engineering background who understand industrial control systems. The C&I space is not IT security, it is industrial control system security. Cybersecurity systems need to be built with engineers and be designed so that they can evolve and not become obsolete like the older legacy systems. We have invited Andrew Wall from Atkins to find out more about the opportunities. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here.
So we hear about hacks in organizations all the time, cybersecurity threats with data being stolen. What happens when infrastructure like our water, power, transport services, when they are vulnerable to cyber attacks?
So the sort of organisations you just described are critical to the operation of our society. Critical national infrastructure, which is the term, provide things like water for us to drink. They provide transport facilities such as trains. They provide electricity through generation and supply to allow us to switch the lights on. They are absolutely critical to the function of our society. But because of that, the impact of the loss of them is huge. People will not be able to use a train. People will not be able to drink. Hospital operations won't be able to be performed. It's got a huge impact.
And why do you think that these critical national infrastructure organizations are vulnerable to cyber attacks?
Typically, critical national infrastructure organizations look to the long term. They have to build and develop systems which are in place for decades. So your typical IT organization, your typical corporate activity is much shorter term. Organizations have a better understanding of that technology. But in critical national infrastructure terms, it's a longer scale. If you take a nuclear plant, for example, we might actually have to spend 10 years designing that, 20 years building it, 50 years operating it, 30 years to shut it down and safely. That's the length of a human lifetime. The threat, which are the people who want to attack these organizations, actually will evolve over that period. The technology we implement will evolve over that period. So it's absolutely essential we can actually understand the risks in that context and help build things that we can evolve.
How can organizations address this vulnerability?
So IT specialists alone are not the solution. That vulnerability is effectively an engineering operational environment vulnerability. So what we want is a blend of people who know the engineering side of things, plus the security side of things, plus the IT side of things, all coming together. Critically, education of people to allow them to operate these plant facilities safely is crucial. We have to make sure we embed in them cyber awareness so they understand what's happening as it happens and can take appropriate action.
And how do you help these organizations understand what's at risk? What threats could possibly occur against which assets?
So we have a process which we apply. That process starts off with identifying what the threats are to a critical national infrastructure organization. Who would want to attack them? In a nuclear power plant, it could be nation state these days. If you look at what's happened in Eastern Europe, it could be our military capability is attacked. So understanding who's going to attack you and how is a critical start point. The organisation then needs to understand what is it is trying to actually protect in that context. What do they value most that we need then to put the security controls around? We need to understand the impact of the loss of those things, either the data's stolen or actually the water stops being pumped, in order to make sure that the business process which sits behind it is actually properly understood. We can then do risk assessments to get an idea of what's the bigger risk, what's the smaller risk, i.e. where do I need to spend my money in order to actually reduce my risk. And flowing out of that naturally is the next phase, which is that's what I want to protect, these are the things I need to do to protect it, and that's your typical security controls.
So like you mentioned, there's a difference between data being stolen and water stops running. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So how do you ensure that each organization has a unique approach?
So every organization their own way is unique. In culture, in the way they operate things, but in a critical national infrastructure environment, there is commonality and similarity in the things they operate. If I'm a water company, I'm collecting and pumping water. That's the same for all of those companies. If I'm generating electricity or moving it around the country, it's the same sort of activity. But the way the company, the organisation does it is slightly different. We use a range of industry standard tools and to industry best practice to tailor that to how the organisation itself operates. So it's focused fully on them in their own cultural approach, but at the same time it's applying best practice in the way that they can understand it and implement it.
Looking forward, the world is becoming even more digitally connected. I mean, I use my phone to control the heating in my house or to order detergent. Do you think critical national infrastructure is implementing these technologies in their operations as well?
The benefits are huge. The way I operate a smartphone at the moment gives me the capability to do things remotely. Critical national infrastructure organisations really want to embrace this technology. If I'm a water company and I have remote sites, the ability for me standing here to operate a pump system 200 miles away is enormous. If I'm in a nuclear power plant and I'm in a different part of the site, I can switch on and off control technology on the other side of the plant. The problem is we don't operate in a social way the same levels of security that we would operate in a safety critical environment, such as a power plant. What we have to do is to make sure that the technology we implement on the phone and the behaviours we use that phone with to operate that technology is as secure as it can be, because it's not just me ordering a book on Amazon. It's something completely different, which has a huge society impact if the power gets turned off.
Andrew, thank you for joining us today, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.